Hello folks, and welcome to today's Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by the head of sport in the Media Guardian, Shane Brophy. Shane, how are things with you? You look like you're in prison there at the moment, you're being detained.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in the office today, but thankfully there's nobody here, so hopefully nobody knocks in the door or makes a phone call over the next while. So somebody watching maybe this live now will probably ring just for the crack to harass me.
Well, if anyone has the number of the Media Guardian offices, give me a ring there. There's absolutely loads to talk about this weekend, Shane. You've got the Dillon Quirke Foundation game, which we want to talk about, which was last weekend. Brilliant occasion there. Preview the senior hurlers match against Dublin this weekend. The footballers are out against Longford. There's big news in camogie front. The ladies footballers are out, and of course Mick Burns has sadly passed away as well. But I suppose the first place to start would have to be last weekend, the Dillon Quirke Foundation game. Huge success, and congratulations to everyone involved.
Yeah, no, it was a credit to everyone. Like, I suppose just the level of esteem, I suppose, that Dillon was in, and I suppose that's what 5,000 people like essentially turned up for a challenger match. There was some going, like, and there was a lot of people like myself who were able to attend, who would have bought non-attendance tickets. So and then you had the people that streamed and paid the €20 that way. Like, so I'd be shocked if they didn't make an awful lot of money last weekend, and I suppose go a long way towards their goal of hitting $1 million. I know this summer they want to try and at least get maybe a lot the Tipperary clubs done this year, like, and maybe one or two more other counties that want to get involved in terms of that SADS screening. Like, so it definitely last Sunday was a great start for them. Yeah,
really, really well done to everyone involved there, and delighted for the Quirke family as well. For them to see it do so well, I'm sure that was, pleasing. So the game itself, look, it's obviously not taken unbelievably seriously, but the teams that are picked, those lads did want to go out and get stuck in when they had the opportunity. Now, Tipperary started probably with my sense is that an awful lot of players that would have known Dillon quite well, to sort of give them the opportunity to go out and honour them. And for a finish, the game ended up Kilkenny 4-20, Tipperary 25. Tip must have been down 12 points there during the first half, then made a real game of it. A couple of lads stood out, and I'd have to say I think Mark Keogh really put his hand up. Weren't we talking in the early weeks of the season that it didn't really seem to be falling his way, but 7 points here, he's kind of laid down a marker, even if it is a challenge match.
I think he needed to, because like, he would have been watching maybe the last couple of games where he came off the bench against Laois and Kilkenny. I think I gotta pull my socks up here. Like, there's so much competition for places in that forward line. I was talking to Jake Morris and Niall O'Mara last week at the North GA Awards, and so I was even mentioning to them, pretty Niall now that he's got the injury, and think, God, you really can't miss any game time in there, because the competition for places is ridiculous. Like, and Mark Keogh probably would have been looking at like Seamus Callanan back and Bonner Maher, his influence, and thinking, God, for me to start, I've got to produce. And okay, it was a challenge game with like 7 points from play. I think 6 in the first half. Like, that was a
5 of those on his right hand side from distance, which you know, I mentioned it on our game as well. Would you go along with that you'd often see him, you'd think he's predominantly left-sided?
Yeah.
Jesus, striking off his right-hand side was excellent.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was one aspect of his game, like he probably needs to speed up his decision-making in terms of when there was a couple of times last year where the easy point was on, and I think he was trying to force goals. I think that the management probably would have, like, if the score is on, take it. Like, okay, it's the smell of a goal, we won't stop you from going for it, but look, don't be slow about maybe tapping the ball over the bar and keeping the scoreboard ticking over.
They were very impressive points now, so I'd say he stood out, and Garrod Dunn would have put down a real marker with Derek Ligg on the other side of things, so wouldn't be surprised to see him starting against Laois this weekend. I suppose of some of the other players that played well, actually, even before I talk about who else played well, very disappointing for Tip to see another injury this week. Kieran Connolly, he's so he's going to miss the championship. Yeah,
I would have thought that the longer the year was going on, it was probably going to be difficult for Kieran to put himself in the fray. I know. I think this hip problem has been lingering since the late 2021 when that county championship winning campaign. And I know he played with UL last year and did very well there. And I think that the problem had arisen there too. And they were kind of hoping, I think, through last summer when he went travelling that maybe a bit of rest and the thing might clear up a bit. But I think he had issues even in the club championship, and hoping maybe that it would clear up without the need for an operation. But now it looks like it needs it. And I suppose for his point of view, he'd hopefully maybe try and get back for a lot more, maybe in the late summer, early autumn, and maybe next year we'll see the best of him. So I suppose, with him and Paddy Cadell gone, that's the panel down to the 38. And I would have thought maybe that there's going to be the biggest thing I would have taken from last weekend was there's probably going to be a small bit of a cull coming before the end of the league start of the championship, and maybe looking at the subs that like Shane Neville taking off before half-time, Joe Fogarty taking off before half-time, Jack Ryan taking off at half-time. They're probably maybe three of the guys maybe you'd be thinking could be vulnerable maybe to being let go, because we haven't seen them enough in the National League. And I think definitely from the Dublin game this weekend and definitely the Waterford game 2 weeks hence, that we're probably going to see more of a shape to a starting 15, even a championship panel beginning to emerge.
Yeah, I'd say definitely on panel, but I still don't think that they're going to nail down a starting 15 or really want to. It kind of reminds me of what Brian Cody said when they said you don't have a settled team, and he says we'll have a settled spirit.
Yeah.
But I would say from a Tipperary point of view, it's more about having a settled style of play so that anyone can go in and you're not too... like in days of old, you'd look at the Tipperary team that starts the first round of the championship and it tends to stay, injury permitting, the exact same way all the time. I think it's a good thing when you don't have that and you go from game to game, changing things up, making lads in training think, okay, I'll get an opportunity if I keep going well. I think that's a good thing. And like you look at some of the players who came in the last day, brilliant to see Conor Stapleton back, because you were wondering how long would he be out after coming off against Laois. And he's made such an impact. Callan came in.
Conor McCarthy starting after the Cork in the crowd. Like he's a big one now with Cathal Barrett's injury. I'd still be optimistic Cathal will be back for the Clare game. I think maybe that injury there, from talking to somebody in the physiotherapy game, they think the time frame is probably on the extreme end maybe of play the worst case scenario, if you know what I mean. Like, but that if things go well, he should be back late March, and maybe his league could be over, but hopefully we'll be back for the Clare game. Yeah,
so like you said, it was good to see Conor McCarthy back, because he seems like he's definitely an option that could produce something for Tipperary. Then Johnny Ryan has obviously been doing well as also, and do you know what? It obviously means that lads are going to get serious opportunities every day. You're like, while Cathal Barrett is out, every day 2 lads are going to be getting an opportunity to nail down the one spot that will be vacant, assuming Cathal is back. Owen Connolly is another lad who's been playing plenty of game time as well. Good to see Noel McGrath getting in there, getting stuck in. Seamus Callan and Dan McCormick did well when he came in. I don't think we've seen Ronan Maher looking as lean ever in his career, have we?
No, he's in great shape.
Like, it's funny, like, and he's not that old. He's probably 27, 28. But it's mad how ripped these players are looking all of a sudden, when last year or two you're wondering, are these lads coming towards the end?
I noticed Ronan came on for Pádraig Campion at half time. Was that was Pádraig a bit isolated at centre back that maybe they took him out, or how did Kilkenny sort of 3 first half goals emerge? Like, was it? Because I haven't seen any highlights of the game.
Yeah, no, I did miss the early stages of the game before I was able to get to the stream, so I haven't even had an opportunity to watch it back. But Tipperary were starting a fairly changed-looking team, and there probably were a few players that we, in odd positions are basically lads that probably won't see too much game time. So maybe Kilkenny were slightly stronger, had, a spine of Owen Murphy in goals, Pádraig Walsh there, David Blanchfield, Hugh Lawler, they were all in the team. Paddy Deegan, John Donnelly and Mossy Keown. So they probably just had a bit of a slightly stronger team going out. And maybe even after what had happened at Nolan Park the week beforehand, they wanted to lay down a bit of a marker. And then your man, Garrod Dunn, is very, very direct. But it just took Tip a while to get going. And as I said, there's a lot of changed faces in there. And, when you talk about bringing on Ronan Maher, Seamus Kennedy, Callan, Noel McGrath, the Bonner, Conor Stapleton, it is going to change the team a nice bit. So, Once Tip got going, though, started to play very good hurling from then on, and I suppose after the early stages of going 10 or 12 behind, won the rest of the game. Now, how much do we read into it? I'm not entirely sure, but Ronan Maher, like, he's looking as good as we've seen in a long time. Seamus Kennedy could really play anywhere from 2 to 12 in this team.
Yeah.
Which is great as well. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of like a settled style of play. Like, all of these lads can kind of plug in anywhere. Are you concerned with the amount of injuries that Tipperary are getting? Is it that different from anyone else, really? Any other?
I don't think so. Like, because look, you'll always have soft tissue injuries at the start of the year. Look, Paddy Cadells and Cathal Barrett's are just one of those, like, they're collision injuries, more like they can happen at any time. Like I suppose Brian McGrath, Conor Stakelam, Conor McCarthy, I suppose they're tough soft tissue injuries. That's what I thought Conor Stakelam's was very worrying, because that was only 2 weeks ago, maybe just cramped up with the hamstring, but I suppose maybe he had load issue. But like that, they're back pretty quick, so that maybe it was just a load issue or something. I'd be interested in terms of the team selection this weekend, whether they might hold Brian O'Mara and Gerard O'Connor out, just because they played 2 games in 3 days last week for UL, and like, okay, they'll have had a week's break, but just like that's where maybe that haven't. I thought that day was gone where they were playing games so back. I was very surprised to see the semi-final and final played within 48 hours of each other, UL or that Fitzgibbon Cup, but I'm sure both of those guys be hoping to get a game in Croke Park. I'm not sure whether either of them would have played in Croke Park before. I know a lot of the players would have, but I'm not sure whether those two have played in Croke Park before.
Yeah, because like those All-Ireland finals, the Tipperary won at under 20 and under 21. Yeah. Were they both in Limerick? Or was one?
They were, yeah. The minor final would have been 16, like the likes of Jake Morris and Mark Keogh would have played in those games, but Podge, not sure, Podge Campion, yeah. So you're thinking, 3.5 years since Tip the last tugged out in Croke Park, so it's good to get a run out there on Saturday.
Yeah, it's important, I think, for Tipperary to go out there and have a decent performance. And I was looking at some of the more recent fixtures that Tipperary have had with Dublin. Now, Dublin are obviously much changed from last year. So many players gone abroad or not playing, or, just like Tipperary, plenty of injuries. Liam Rush isn't there, Chris Crummy isn't there, Cian O'Callaghan is away. Rian McBride, I don't think is talking out this year, and there are several other players as well. Not to mention Ronan Hayes is injured. I'm not sure Alex Considine is back either. So it's based on what Micheál Donoghue would like to have available, it's far weaker than what he would want. And while Tipperary have injuries, the depth seems to be there. Now that Tipperary are humming and the style of play seems to be there, and the lads seem physically just that bit better conditioned. Is there a sense that Tipperary could actually win well here?
I think there's a chance we could win. I think it's a game. I think it's a game Liam Cahill probably will go pretty strong with. Because I suppose as like this time last year, Tip won their first 2 matches, as they did this year. But it was the defeat to Dublin and Waterford, which did for their league hopes. And I suppose on paper that Waterford game is probably the toughest one Tip have left. So if Tip win this weekend, and with Antrim to come, and like that's no gimme up in Belfast either. But you think on current form, Tip should be able to get to a league semi-final if they're able to beat Dublin at the weekend. So I'm just looking at Liam Cahill's comments from after the game on Sunday, just talking about the league. And the league is ideal for new managers like myself, which gives us an opportunity to test players in different environments, different challenges. I don't like the league being devalued. It's been devalued quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. The reality is that there are 2 national titles handed out each year at intercounty level. One is the All-Ireland and the second one is the National Hurling League. I was very fortunate to win 2 league medals as a player, and I cherish them. It's 2008 since we last won the league, and it would be nice to get to the final and correct that. So that says to me that Tip he'll be hell-bent on at least getting to a semi-final. Like, and I do think, like he mentioned their league being devalued. Like some counties will want a strong league, some won't. Like, and I do think Tipper one of those teams that okay, in the recent past, where if we've had a bad end to the league, it tends to carry over to the championship. But like I do think that Tip could do with the extra games, be the semi-final or final. Look, even if you end up losing them before you go on to play Clare, I just think there's so much learning from them to be got that maybe a defeat in maybe a league semi-final or final won't create a hangover like it did in 2017 and 2018 when I suppose Michael Ryan suffered those two bad league final defeats to Galway, Kilkenny, and it lingered into the championship. Then it created a hangover, which ultimately hampered as the year went on.
Yeah, I would like Tipperary to go to win the league. I'm not going to be massively disappointed or overly critical if Tipperary don't win it. But I do like where Liam Cahill is going with this, saying, it's 15 years since Tipperary won a league. Tipperary, I think up until Kilkenny shared the title, so therefore they'll get +1 in the league title winning column. Like Tipperary were always the top team in terms of the league. So why not try and continue that history as well? And like for Tipperary, despite the injuries, it seems like there's a very large panel there to pick from that they can decide, okay, against, win this weekend against Dublin, hopefully. Then you can sort of try a few lads against Waterford while still keeping a strong team. Then you can do the same thing again against Antrim and expect to win. Now, maybe I'm just expecting a little bit too much in terms of like Tipperary change up and still win the team. But if you win this weekend, it allows you to try things in the next two games and still expect to get to a league semi-final. And then go hard for those two games, and you have a couple of weeks before Clare. To me, that's like it's in games where you like to have that balance of coaching and working on your game plan. But they've had probably 3 or 4 months of working at it. So now they have an opportunity. Every game they're going to learn more and more and more.
Oh, definitely. I know. I'm really looking forward to the game on Saturday because I think we got no tests against Laois. Kilkenny were so poor in the first half. I do think like we'll get Dublin at their strongest. Like, okay, they're missing a few guys, but it'll be a fully motivated Dublin squad. Like, probably playing a lot of the same style we are. Like, just looking at the Waterford game, very comfortable on the ball. I think Cian Boland back for them is a real plus. Like, I'm a big fan of Boland's. I think he's their Bonner Maher, if you know what I mean. He revels in he's winning the dirty ball and he's able to score as well. And they're able to go direct from Donald Burke. Like they have a lot of good players. Like I suppose losing Cian O'Callaghan's a big loss, and who's the corner forward who played against Waterford? He was very good. I think he was injured for the Antrim game. He's a big.
How about Ronan Hayes?
No, he's a big unit.
Alex Considine?
Yeah. I tell you, he impressed me a bit against Waterford. I don't think he played against Antrim. I think he might have been injured, so they would have had a few weeks maybe to clear up some of those injuries. And no, I think definitely from next weekend, next Saturday, I think we'll get a real good feel for where Tip are at.
Yeah, and do you kind of feel like the positivity is building around the county all the time in terms of where this team is going? I think
there's a comfort in that we know, look, the best players are there. Okay, there's lads that are injured, but there's an understanding that there's a style of play has to come in. It's bedding together. Like there's no doubt about it. Look, there's going to be hiccups along the road. It could happen this weekend. Look, there's been a few times we've gone to Dublin and we've come back with the tails between our legs. Look, there's going to be hiccups.
That's generally at Parnell Park, though.
But but you never know. Like it's a big game. As I said, there's a lot of guys. It's been a long few times since some of these guys have played up there, so it'll be a big occasion for them. And look a big pitch there that these our lads should thrive on it. So it'd be interesting to see, especially in terms of our attacking play, how we, as well as firstly in terms of the team that's selected. Like, will they be an element of, okay, will we try and marry maybe some of the things that did work in the first two games? Like I thought the forward line gelled. It looked like it gelled an awful lot more with Bonner Maher at the pivot at full forward. So will they go back to him? I would, but he just brings so many other players into the play. Like it's, but then like Rod O'Connor hasn't, didn't get a run the last time. Will he come back into it as well if they feel that he wouldn't be an injury risk, but maybe he's just giving cup exertion. So who are they thinking about at centre back? Will they look at Brian O'Mara? Will Ron O'Mara be their 6, or will they push him out to 7? Like, so a lot of things up in the air. Will they potentially have a look at Enda Heffernan at full back, maybe? Because like they know Michael Breen probably is the number 1, but do we have a fallback at that full back? Will they go quickly? So be interesting to see in terms of team selection what they're. As I do think there will be an element of experimentation. I do think it'll be a strong Tip lineup, but there'll be guys given a chance. Maybe the Waterford game is the one where they might go to look at maybe something close to their best 15 that day.
Actually, as you mentioned, the notion of having a backup option for full back, I'm not entirely sure if it would suit Enda Heffernan just pace-wise. I do think he's a good player and he's really impressive. I'm just not sure that would suit him. But I'd be curious to see, given, we've already talked about the shape he's in, and the fact that I think Tipperary just have a bit more of a better setup this year to protect the back line a bit better. There isn't fast ball going in as easy. How would Ronan Maher do fullback with that sort of protection in front of him as another option back there?
He may well end up being that guy, because he's been there before, and the manager will know, look, if push comes to shove, who do you go? Do you go with the guy who's played back there before for club and county very well, or do you go with an untried person? Because like we do have options in the half back line. If you had to move Ronan back to full back, like you could move Seamus Kennedy back to wing back. You have Heffernan, you have Campion, you have Brian McGrath, Brian O'Mara. Like there are Dan McCormack can go back there, and he wouldn't weaken it either. So I'd say, look, if Michael Breen did get injured or maybe lost form, it probably would be Ronan at 3, and it's like, what you tried and trusted, what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, Owen Connolly is another option as well, but I think he'd be again. I'd be interested to see Ronan there. Also brilliant in the air, and if Tipperary's goalkeeper goes short to Ronan and he's on the 21, he could put it into inside the 14 with a flick of the wrist, which is also a good thing. He could spray it wherever he likes, but the fact that he can do that as well, if the opposition pushes up and he's able to put it all the way into the 14. Isn't that a lovely?
I like that now. In late 2019, he was full back, but like he was made a hero of it in the Wexford match, the Kilkenny match, when they were just pumping ball in the top of the square. And Ronan Maher loves that stuff. It's maybe when he's dragged left and right by the likes of Aaron Gillan, where maybe he comes under pressure. Like, and Dublin are going to be the type of team who will be playing it through the lines as much as they can, maybe getting guys running out into the corners, and maybe the glass coming off the shoulder. So that's maybe where Ronan could come under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, River Power says we need a big panel because we've players who are injury prone. Conor McCarthy, Niall O'Mara, John McGrath, a few more need to be managed. Can't play weekend after weekend in Munster. Sure, look, we already know that the massive panel is huge. Those 4 games, they're such bruising encounters. You spend months building up to them. There's going to be collisions, and inevitably there's going to be injuries. So I couldn't agree any more with River Power there.
That's what in terms of Tips campaign, they'll have 2 weeks between the Clare and the Cork match, and then there's 2 weeks between the Cork and the Limerick game, and then the Limerick Waterford match is back onto each other Sunday after Sunday. So in terms of Tip schedule, in terms of not playing consecutive weekends, it's not too bad actually this year. I say my only one concern is starting with 2 away matches, and if you don't get anything out of them, you have Limerick and Waterford waiting at home, and of course, Waterford will have played 3 matches in Semple Stadium this year, potentially 5 if they play a league semi-final and final in Thurles. Like, they'll nearly have played more in there by the time Tip play Waterford in the championship than Tip will have. I've always said the Semple Stadium has no advantage to Tipperary because every other county plays there as much, if not more, than Tip do.
Yeah. So just to remind people how Dublin have done this year, they drew with Waterford, even though Waterford had 13 men for the last 10 minutes plus injury time. That was 3-16 to 2-19. So they did that with goals that day. The last day out, I was at their victory over Antrim. That was 28 points to 2-19. Lots of lads playing like Dublin have a very good team. It's just they're probably lacking that little bit at the sharp end of the field, which, that's forever the problem, really. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of the hurling team before we move on?
Yeah, no, I'd be I'd be excited to see how the forwards go. As I say, Waterford got 3 goals against Dublin, Antrim got 2 and had a few more goal chances as well. So I think the open spaces and the speed, that's what the extra athleticism I'd be optimistic now to see that it will probably have a few more goal chances. I don't think they created an awful lot in terms of goals against Kilkenny in the Dillon Quirke match, but no, I'd be optimistic that Tip would be able to go up there and get a result, and look, it would put us in a great shape to make a semi-final at least.
Did you? Will you be making it up for it?
Oh, I'll be heading up all right. Yeah, no, I won't miss that one.
Yeah, I'm curious. Will you stay on to watch Dublin Clare in the football after it?
I won't. I'll be coming back because I think the plan is to go to the camogie match in Parnell Park at 2 as well. So I'll be doing a double header, but it won't be staying on for the football. That's for certain.
Yeah, you're going to make a fair old day of it. So,
and you know as well as I do, Shane. Level 7 at Crow Park in February is not even in August. It's not the warmest spot. Whatever about February.
Yeah, if you get that crosswind, you're under awful pressure.
Oh Christ.
With deep sadness, we've learned of the passing of Mick Burns, of Nina Éire and Tipperary, of course. So Mick played in 8 All-Ireland senior hurling finals in a 10-year period between 1958 and 1968, and he won 5 of those. So, you know, as legendary as they come, really, in terms of the success he's had.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Like an incredible legacy of a player, like being in Tip's golden generation. Like it's I think he's probably the least heralded maybe of a lot of those Tip players, but like he was teak tough in that half back line, and you had to be like to go from 58 to 65, winning 5 of those All Irelands, playing for that team for almost a decade, and real stalwart, a very quietly spoken man. I wouldn't have met him that often, like, but was always highly regarded within the Tipperary setup. When speaking to some of his former teammates, and definitely within the town, Nina's probably greatest son. I suppose him and Michael Cleary would have brought great honour to the club with their All Ireland exploits. And I know he'd be sadly missed. I know he'd been suffered a bit from mental health in recent times, and but I'm sure on Friday evening and Saturday when his funeral is on, there'll be huge crowds at it to send off a Tipperary great.
Yeah, and he won a minor All Ireland. He also won 7 Munsters league titles, Oireachtas and Railway Cup medals. With Nina, then he captured North Tip minor medals in 51, 53, and 55. North senior medals in 57 and 64, and he captained the 64 team as well.
That 64 success, like the iconic photo of him with the cup and it being lifted shoulders high. I think it's on the cover of one of the Nina Gaelic history book, so it's probably one that we're going to see a lot of over the next while now. He was he definitely is a loss for Nina. There's no doubt about it. But probably the first hurler to really put Nina on the map. Really, like there wouldn't have been a huge tradition of hurling in the town in terms of inter-county calibre players until he came along in the late 50s.
Yeah, and I saw Tipperary obviously GA made a statement and, you know, extending their sincere sympathies to his wife Pauline, sons Michael, Ronan and John, daughters Michelle and Ciara, his grandchildren and the extended families, and we'd also echo that as well. This weekend the Tipperary footballers are back out. It hasn't been a great start to the year. This weekend it's going to be against Longford, who also have had a pretty poor start as well. So both teams have lost their opening 3 league games. And interestingly, this is going to be up against Paddy Christie, a man he's over Longford, but a man very well known in Tipperary, and obviously he'll know the Tipperary players very well.
That's it. Yeah, it's remarkable. Like you would say, you would have thought after the O'Byrne Cup and Longford won that, you think, God, Longford are going to take a real bounce into the National League, and you say, God, they might be an outside chance for promotion, but God, they've had a rotten start, and no more than Tip 3 losses out of 3. So look, it's looking like the loser of this game is essentially going down. The winner will have a chance, and there's actually more pressure on Tipperary to win this weekend because Tip, with Antrim on 2 points, Antrim have the head-to-head over Tip. So you'd be thinking if Longford win, they still have to play Antrim. So if they could get a second win there. So like Tip have to win this weekend and get another win or two somewhere else. And like you're looking at Fermanagh away to Fermanagh, home to Offaly, away to Westmeath. Like Westmeath and Fermanagh are flying it, and look, Offaly under Liam Kearns, he'd know. Okay, there's a lot of the Tip players have gone since he was there, but look, he'll know some more of them. But the Tip are under savage pressure. But maybe getting away from home. I said Longford are going to be under ferocious pressure themselves at home. Sometimes getting away from home maybe, and speaking along, sometimes playing at home mightn't help you either. So that there'll be a bit of pressure on Paddy Crispy and the boys at home. So look, you just hope that Tip finds something. But they found very, very little against Antrim last weekend. Well beaten. Like probably a strong finish by Tip put a bit of gloss in the final scoreline, but yeah, it's like you can't always be it can't all be put down to Conor Sweeney and Stephen O'Brien being missing. And like I know the established game plan going into the start of the league was O'Connor, Sweeney, and O'Brien in the full forward line playing direct into the three boys, and screening up. None of the three of them were available last weekend. Sean O'Connor was after his UCC exploits. I don't think he was in. He wasn't fit to play either. So like you had none of your three inside forwards that you were hoping to be your plan A in the league and championship were available. And I suppose that's the risk you take with maybe that style of play, where if any of them are available, maybe your plan A goes out the window, and what is your plan B? It sort of doesn't look like they have a plan B at the moment. Mark Russell wasn't available last weekend either. So look, you just, what do you do? Like it's like you just got to. How can you change your game plan at this stage? It's going to be difficult. Like maybe this week you just go back to train and say like we got to make ourselves hard to beat and maybe pick off Longford on the counter attack. It's going to be difficult, but like they've got to go to Longford and get a result. There's no if they lose to Longford, okay, there's still 6 points to play for, but it's hard to know where you're going to pick up the 6 points if you don't get it against Longford.
Yeah, it's a huge clash for that reason. Even Andy McEntee, who was over Antrim, he was talking about basically how comprehensive it was against Tip last week, and he said we conceded 4 or 5 points at the end when there was no need. We had possession and we got a little bit casual trying to flick balls up. Times like that, you win the ball, you win your free, you kill the game, make sure you don't give a team momentum. So it does kind of speak to Tipperary not really firing on all cylinders, to put it mildly. And that was by losing. That was in a game they lost by 8 points at home. Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah, they've lost like in Bill Maher or Robbie Kiley, Jason Rundy. They've lost an awful lot of athletic guys who are very, very good in transition. Like, and I suppose that's where sort of the inter-county game is at the moment. If you're not transitioning at pace, a counter-attack from defence into attack, you're going to struggle to score. Like, because like I said, everybody's sort of playing the same type of football. If you're going lateral across the pitch, unless you have big bruising ball carriers that can break tackles and maybe penetrate off slow ball, you're going to struggle. And that's sort of where Tip are at the moment, that we don't have the big physical guys to penetrate, and we don't have the quick guys to penetrate either. So you're kind of stuck with a sort of stodgy defense. Then going back the other way, it's too easy for the athletic teams, so the likes of Antrim are to counter attack.
Question here from Michael Horrigan: why is Tip v Dublin not live on TV on Saturday? Well, RTE have gone with Kerry against Armagh, and I'd just imagine it's probably a bigger draw. There's nothing more to it.
Oh yeah, and we might be selfish about Dublin, and Dublin v Tip is not. It's not a plum game in terms of the hurling fixtures this weekend. I'd say at best it's number 3 after Galway and Limerick is live on Sunday, and I think Wexford and Clare is not even being shown live either. So look, we could be selfish about it, but Dublin to Tip is not a plum draw game for TV this weekend.
Yeah, certainly the football seems to be taking.
Because it doesn't help that maybe the Dublin footballers game against Clare is not one that's going to draw the TV cameras either.
No, certainly not.
We're looking at it live double header either. So
I'd imagine that Dennis Kelly would be delighted with that victory over Galway at the weekend, 4-9 to 1-9 in Durag. like that's a seriously impressive victory there. And I'll just read out some of the details here that I have on an article. Karen Kennedy scored a stunning 4th-minute goal. Roisin Howard and Courtney Ryan also raised green flags. So Tipper up 3-6 to 1-3 at the break. Carrie Dolan found the net fortuitously from long-range distance free. And then I think they have AFL legend Cora Staunton in his performance analyst. Anyway, but Tipperary, highly impressive.
Yeah, no, it was a good start. I don't think they'll be getting too carried away. Like it was a very experimental Galway lineup. Excuse me. A lot of the more established players were sitting it out. But like Tipperary were missing a good few as well. Mary Ryan, Cottavani only came off the bench. So like they were far from full strength, but like it was great to see. Great start under new management, go and win and get 9-point win at home against the league champions. Can't be sniffed at. Yeah, I just saw a clip of the Karen Kennedy's goal, and definitely is an element of the modern hurling game, carrying the ball through the lines. I couldn't believe the speed of Karen Kennedy. She carried the ball out of the centre back, ripped through the middle of the Galway defence, laid the ball off, 1-2 back to her, and she stuck it in the net. So there's definitely an element of Tip buying into the modern style of camogie. So it's good to see your own clubmate Teresa Ryan back. I think she was in Australia for a few years. She's definitely added something into attack. So looks like they're going to be building a panel. I suppose there was a bit of a setback with, I suppose, the news at Orla Dwyer, who had originally committed. She's had to opt out because I think Brisbane Lions have called her back to Australia a bit earlier. They've given her permission to play, but I think that they've changed their minds on that. They've called her back to Australia a bit earlier. So look, I suppose from Dennis's point of view, he's quite disappointed. He'd love to have had her. At least that call was made now, maybe that rather than 2 or 3 games into the league where maybe you were betting you were into her plans, and then suddenly she's taken away. They started without her. I suppose that's offset by Irina Friday. She's come back onto the panel. She was unsure about whether she was going to be able to commit at the start of the year. She's been able to commit now. So sure, over the next few weeks she'll bed back in, and look, they'll be strongly fancy to make it 2 wins out of 2 against Dublin this weekend. It's up in Parnell Park. Dublin were well beaten by Cork last weekend. So we hopefully fancy to get 2 wins out of 2. And continuing on then to the Cork and the Kilkenny and the Wexford game, or the Clare game, sorry. Like no more than the Tip hurlers, I think Tip could be eyeing up maybe a league final appearance, maybe just to break down a barrier and just get a bit of confidence into the group of, okay, while I had a disappointing 2021, on paper, it actually does look like a stronger Tipperary squad this year.
Yeah, and like even with Dublin this weekend, as you're saying, in Parnell Park, Jerry McQuaid, he's over the team with Dublin. But Paul Kelly was only installed as manager, I think, in maybe late October, maybe even close to January. And I'm not really sure what happened in terms of the change of management there, but he's no longer involved. So that's that. And you were talking about Irina Friday coming back in as well. The Tipperary ladies footballers, it hasn't been a smooth start to the season with 3 defeats from 3. Do you see any opportunities for that to change this weekend away to Monaghan?
No. The ladies footballers have. Sorry. Yeah, they won their first 3 games. They lost last weekend against Laois. Yeah, they lost last weekend against Laois. Surprisingly enough,
it was the men's footballers who lost 3v3.
I suppose they're under a bit of pressure now. Look, it's their only away match of the campaign is against Monaghan. Okay, Monaghan haven't had a great start themselves. But I suppose from Tip's point of view, they'd be a bit concerned that in the last 2 games, even in the game win against Roscommon, they won that match 6 points to 4. And then last weekend, only scored 8 times, 3-5, and they scored 3-3 in the first half, only scored twice in the second half. So that'll be a concern, that how have the scores dried up in the second half? Even against Westmeath, while they got a late winner, there was chances for Westmeath in that game maybe to pull ahead. So that division is very, very competitive. It looks like Armagh are the class in the field at the moment, but Tip have Armagh in the last round of the competition. So if Tip were able to beat Monaghan, beat Tyrone, then it could all come down to that game at home against Armagh, which could be decisive, and hopefully a team will have bedded together. But definitely, I suppose, from looking at their last 2 games. Definitely their scoring in the second halves, how and why it's drying up, will definitely concern Peter Creedon.
Anything else you want to touch on before we finish up?
No, I suppose it's heading into, I suppose, looking forward to this weekend, get back to Croke Park. As I haven't been up there since the Tip Mayo semi-final in 2020. I keep forgetting that. It wasn't the All-Ireland final in 2019 the last time I was up there. But I'm hoping that hoping to see the hurlers maybe kick on another bit, and just fascinated to see how different teams go this week, particularly how Galway will bounce back at home to Limerick. I'd be expecting a big Galway rally this weekend against Limerick, and I think that will definitely be a game worth watching on Sunday afternoon, and other than our own game on Saturday. Yeah,
and there's a number of hurling games this weekend that you just expect you expect Cork to beat Westmeath, you expect Kilkenny to beat Laois. There's a few fixtures like that, so the real plum ties are kind of few and far between this weekend, but you never know which games will surprise us. So that's it for the show this week. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian, and we'll be back again next Wednesday doing it all again. Thanks, Shane.
Cheers, Shane.